Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy, and today we have a special discussion video going over one of the most important new cards from Rebel Clash, and that is going to be Twin Energy. Though of course we have our full Rebel Clash set review coming eventually down the road, I want to go much more in depth and spend more time on the card than our normal set review would allow for. So I think Twin Energy is actually a uniquely important card that is coming out in the set that has far-reaching effects across a number of different decks, both past and present, which means we'll primarily be focused on talking about the current card pool and less so upcoming cards in Rebel Clash. Of course, we'll spend more time on those in our actual full set review. And we did do a similar style video for Quick Ball prior to Sword and Shield, which did seem to go over really well with you guys. So if these are videos you would like to see more of in the future, of course, feel free to smack that like button and comment down below as well. So if you guys aren't too familiar with Twin Energy, let's take a look at what the card does. So this is going to be a new special energy that we look to be getting in our Rebel Clash set in May, but it provides 2 colorless energy. And if it's attached to a Pokemon V or Pokemon GX, it only provides 1 colorless energy instead. So this is effectively a reprint of Double Colorless Energy, which we just had rotate out of format last season. You know, one of the most impactful cards that we had ever since it got reprinted back into the game back in Heart Gold, Soul Silver. You know, the card has been so dominant. We actually saw a lot of players cheerleading to get it banned from the format just because of how impactful the card was, most notably because of Zoroark GX at the time as well. But nevertheless, there's just been historically a number of different extremely strong archetypes over the years that have benefited from having this style effect for them. So right now, even without Twin Energy in the format, we still do have a number of different ways to fulfill a double colorless energy cost like this. But I will have to admit, a lot of them are going to be a little bit clunky and definitely have their own downsides. Of course, the 2 special energies in format that do this currently are going to be Super Boost Energy Prism Star and more notably Triple Acceleration Energy. Both of these are for different types of evolution Pokemon, but of course have some pretty heavy drawbacks to them. You know, Super Boost Energy Prism Star in particular only really gets that really good benefit of having 4 energy if it's attached to a Stage 2 Pokemon with 3 or more Stage 2 Pokemon in play. And on top of that, being a Prism Star, it means you're only limited to 1 per deck, so you can't really effectively build around a card like that. Whereas on the other hand, we have Triple Acceleration, which is, you know, a little bit more consistent. You don't have some of the heavy restrictions on it. Really, the only thing is that it has to be attached to an evolution Pokemon, but the big downside to Triple Acceleration Energy is that it gets discarded at the end of your turn. And even beyond that, there are some other ways that cheating an extra attachment into play. Of course, we have different trainer-based forms of energy acceleration like Welder and Mina. But of course, both of these are going to count as your supporter for turn. And if you are a deck that only really wants to attack for 2 energy at a time, a lot of times Welder in particular is going to force you to run a lot more energy in your deck than you might otherwise want to, if you do want to consistently be able to find those energies to accelerate with the card. We also have the more recent bead that just came out in Sword and Shield. But again, supporter-based energy acceleration is not the most ideal. And in terms of Pokemon, there are actually a number of different ways we can accelerate energy. Of course, we have Malamar in the format, we have Tapu Koko Prism Star, we have things like the recent Rillaboom from Sword and Shield as well. But in the case of these Pokemon-based forms of energy acceleration outside of Tapu Koko Prism Star, these methods require a lot of deck space just to cheat an extra energy into play, making them less ideal, especially for Stage 1 and Stage 2 decks that don't have that sort of deck space as a luxury for them, unlike basic attacking decks. So then the next question from there is, what are in fact the cards and decks that do want to benefit from something like Twin Energy the most? We're going to break it into 2 categories. We're going to look at the standard format and then the expanded format afterwards, because I do think there are decks and cards in both formats that really might have their eye on a card like this. And while some of these might not end up being tier 1 decks even after Twin Energy releases, I think a lot of these cards are good and formerly good cards that have kind of been forgotten about because of their lack of an efficient way to get powered up. So just to keep in mind, we're not suggesting here that all of these are super broken cards once Twin Energy comes out, but just they need to be revisited and at least given another look now. So without any more rambling, let's start to actually take a look at some of the cards that are going to benefit the most from Twin Energy. And I will point out, we're going to be focusing on mainly just cards that attack for a single Twin Energy and not so much cards that attack for multiple energy attachments. That means we're going to be looking at cards closer to Weezing than something like Corviknight, just as an example. Otherwise, this video would probably be significantly longer than it already will end up being. And so going ahead and looking at cards in the standard format, the first card I want to mention is Empoleon, back from Cosmic Eclipse. This is actually one of a couple different Pokemon from Cosmic Eclipse that do look to benefit from this card. Now I will say Empoleon does benefit a little less than some of the others, since it already does have triple acceleration energy, and its second attack, Aquafall, will discard all energy already. But nevertheless, it is kind of nice to be able to throw down a twin energy and use the recall attack on Empoleon, and then whenever you're ready to, be able to use Aquafall without having to attach an additional energy from there. So who knows, with more and more tools getting added to the card pool for Empoleon to use, maybe one day it'll finally make a splash. So the next card I want to talk about is one actually I think not many people might even recognize, but it's actually going to be a Tapu Koko back from Lost Thunder. So Tapu Koko is a basic Pokemon, and the reason we're kind of looking at this is for that strafe attack for 2 colorless energy. It does 30, and you switch this with one of your bench Pokemon. So it's a hit and run style Pokemon that we have in the format, but of course without something like double colorless energy or even the counter energy it previously had access to for a little bit. Tapu Koko really hasn't had a chance to shine, but with twin energy now enabling it to use that strafe attack, and now having a variety of good wall options in the format, like Lily's Pokédoll, the soon-to-be Galarian Corsola, etc. And with Lightning, of course, still having some very good damage modifiers in the form of Electro Power, Tapu Koko now actually might be a card worth considering. So we have another basic lightning attacker here, and that is going to be Stunfisk. So this is actually one of the cards that is on this list that has already seen some degree of play. You know, some people were experimenting with Stunfisk right around when Unbroken Bonds came out. Really never had a huge showing by any means, but the card nevertheless was on people's radar at one point. And Stunfisk has this second attack at just 30 for each of your Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So one of the more budget-friendly decks that was being hyped around the time when Broken Bonds came out was Stunfisk with the Spiritomb that was able to put damage counters on itself, and then you would attach a double colorless energy, or in this case now a twin energy, to hit for large amounts of damage. And with us still having Electro Power in the format and gaining Quick Ball in the past set, you know, Stunfisk now has the tools that it needs at its disposal to be able to actually function properly again. Another card back from Unbroken Bonds that we're going to be looking at is actually going to be Weezing. This is one of my personal favorites from the list. Weezing is a deck that was actually pretty solid for literally just one format right when it first came out, and then the early rotation hit and kind of, you know, neutered the deck pretty substantially. Recently, I have actually been messing around with it and expanded. I actually posted my list for it that I was planning on using at Charlotte Regionals not too long ago, so go check that out if you guys have the itch to see some Weezing in action. But getting Twin Energy is a really big boost to this card in the standard format. Now granted, it still does lack answers to a couple of the major players in the current format, like ADP just as an example. But now with Rebel Clash giving us Twin Energy, us still having Spell Tag in the format, getting access to Flapple now, Weezing actually is going to get a decent little boost from this set. It'll be interesting to see if Weezing is going to be able to make a resurgence back in the format. So again, taking a look at another deck that actually used to see a fair bit of play, that is going to be the Lost March deck. So Lost March in particular lost a ton from the early rotation that happened when Unified Minds came out. It lost just so many important things. The deck really just could not function. But lately, the deck has actually been slowly gaining more new tools ever since Cosmic Eclipse. You know, not only do we have Cottonee now to hit things like Arceus, Palkia, GX for weakness, but we just got Great Ball and a ton of good searching options from Sword and Shield, and now Rebel Clash is going to be giving us Turf Field, and also, of course, more importantly for this discussion, Twin Energy, which is going to allow us to attack with our basic Lost March attackers. So, of course, the Jumpluff attacks for Grass Energy, and the Natu and Cottonee are going to need an additional attachment beyond that, and up until this point, we really haven't had a great way at pulling that off, so Twin Energy is going to be a huge boost for a deck like this. I think Dragapult VMAX might be a big obstacle for the deck to maybe come back and be like a tier 1 contender, but nevertheless, the deck will at least be a functioning archetype once again, and that's going to be primarily thanks to Twin Energy here. Another stage 2 we're going to be looking at from Cosmic Eclipse is Gallade. So Gallade is a stage 2 Pokemon, and actually a deck we did cover on the channel, and actually functioned surprisingly well even without something like Double Colorless Energy or Twin Energy. So Gallade, its attack for 2 colorless energy does 120, and you move an energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. So of course the big thing with this card is you're staring down a big attacker. It looks like you're about to get knocked out, so you can attach yourself a Twin Energy, use Power Cyclone, and move that energy to your next Gallade while your active one gets knocked out. And with Gallade also having access to a number of other decent cards, like the new Horror Psychic Energy coming out in the same set, and also still having access to things like Draw Energy, Recycle Energy, even the new Capture Energy, Gallade is definitely a card that gains a good bit in terms of energy from this new Rebel Clash set. And speaking of Psychic Evolutions, we have another one that is going to be a Stage 1 Golurk. This is probably a card that is, probably not even caught your eye before. It's probably just been sold off in your bulk that you might have. But Golurk's actually a kind of interesting card for 2 colorless energy. It hits for 160, but if you have any supporter cards in your discard pile, this attack does nothing. So, fun fact, I was actually attempting to build around this when Sword and Shield came out. It got Lucky Egg, which is a big boost to it. So using things like Lucky Egg and Zebstrika, you can pretty successfully attack with this thing. And now that we have Twin Energy in the format, Golurk is now, a more enticing one prize option than it might have been before. Especially since we have Zebstrika in the format, the Lucky Egg, etc. like I already mentioned. It seems like a fairly consistent way of doing 160, even with the restriction of not being allowed to have supporters in your discard pile. Next up, we're going to be looking at one of the fossil Pokemon that we have, and that's going to be Armaldo. Armaldo is a Stage 2 Pokemon that, of course, does evolve from the unidentified fossil, something to keep in mind here. And it has this first attack here for a double colorless energy, is 50 for each unidentified fossil card in your discard pile. So if we have all 4 unidentified fossil in the discard pile, we can hit for 220, which is actually a really good number since that will knock out something like a Zacian V. You can also hit a number of popular Pokemon for weakness like Pikachu Zekrom GX, and even something like the new Toxtricity VMAX that's going to be coming out in Rebel Clash. Up until now, all this deck has really had is triple acceleration energy, and it's just really hard to build your deck around a card that's limited to only 4 copies in a deck and discards itself after each use. Up next, we have another card from Unbroken Bonds we're going to be looking at, and that is going to be Crabominable. So Crabominable is a Stage 1 here, and it has this Vital and attack for 2 colorless energy is 30, and it says if you have fewer Pokemon play than your opponent, this attack is 50 more for each Pokemon fewer you have in play. So if we just run through the math and you have your 1 Crabominable and 1 on your bench, and your opponent has a full bench, you're going to be hitting for 230 damage with this thing just for a single attachment. That's pretty impressive. Much like with the Armaldo we just talked about, this can one-shot Zacian V, but also knock out other 2 and 3 prize fighting weak Pokemon out there, like Pikarom, like Toxtricity VMAX, even more Pico V, just as an example as well. And Crabominable hasn't really had the tools at its disposal in order to pull something like this off recently until we got Twin Energy in the format. So the next card we're going to be looking at is another Stage 1 Pokemon. This is going to be Doublade, and this is a card that actually did see some degree of play when it came out. So it'll be interesting to see if it can make any sort of resurgence. And we're looking at, for this Tool Drop attack for 2 colorless energy, it does 30 for each Pokemon tool card attached to all Pokemon. And with Pokemon tools being pretty prevalent in the current format, this is definitely a solid attack. Now I will say that HPs have scaled a bit since Doublade originally came out back in Team Up, but still having access to Adventure Bag, Genesect GX to store multiple tools on, etc. I think still bodes really well for a card like this, and will definitely make people take another look at Doublade again. And the last card we're going to be looking at for the standard format here is going to be Steelix. So Steelix is another card that came out in Cosmic Eclipse. You guys can tell there's a good bit in that set that would have loved to have something like double colorless energy or twin energy in the format. And Steelix here is a Stage 1 170 HP, which is really nice, and it has this Thumping Fall attack. For 2 colorless energy, you discard any number of Pokemon with a retreat cost of exactly 4 from your hand, and does 50 for each card you discarded in this way. So I always thought Steelix was a pretty cool Pokemon. Has sort of this pseudo unlimited damage cap here. It has access to actually a lot of cool tools that help the card get up and running. There's Pokemaniac to search out your entire evolution line. Pokemaniac can also find your Pokemon that you might want to discard with this attack. There's Lure Ball to get back the Pokemon you've discarded. You have Buff Padding if you want to give your Steelix a little bit of extra HP. And now with Twin Energy in the format, you no longer have to kind of think about using something like Welder or something like Triple Acceleration Energy. You have a much more reliable way of actually attacking with Steelix. So this is definitely a card that I personally want to get around to messing with, now that this card seemingly has most of the pieces it might need to be a functioning archetype. So that's going to be it for standard, but there's definitely a handful of cards in the expanded format as well that I think people already have their eyes on to potentially use with Twin Energy. So I'm not going to run through these one by one, kind of like we did for standard, just because I think Twin Energy fills kind of the same role in a lot of these decks. Like typically, A lot of these cards that you're going to see here on screen, they are decks that typically play only 4 double colorless energy and some copies of Special Charge to get those energies back into their deck. But really, I think where Twin Energy can be nice is basically serving as kind of like a 5th double colorless energy, or maybe even a 6th one, just to give you more physical outs to drawing into those energies. So I think there's a couple of cards here in particular that this really could help apply for. I think the big ones are going to be Accelgor and Seismitoad EX. Because in the case of these specifically, they are both going for a sort of locking strategy, and you don't want to be able to miss a turn of that lock, or you want to be able to find your double colorless energy, or twin energy now in this case, to get that lock up and running as soon as possible. You know, especially in the case of Seismitoad EX, which I know a lot of people have talked about with twin energy, on that first turn that you're able to Quaking Punch and you whiff that double colorless energy to start item locking your opponent. Sometimes just missing that one turn is enough to give your opponent a chance to actually set up without their items being shut off and keeping them in the game. So I think being able to run basically a 5th double colorless energy is something that could be really good, both in the Seismitoad deck and the Accelgor deck. So even though Accelgor already has triple acceleration energy at its disposal, if you're attacking with Mew EX, that's not really a card you want to use. So I think if you were ever going to consider playing Accelgor, not that it's been positioned the best in recent memory, but if you were going to play it, you can easily forgo the 1 of triple acceleration for like a 1 of twin energy, just to be able to draw into it a little bit more consistently. But by and large, guys, like I said, you're not cutting double colorless energy from these decks. You're basically probably prefer to play just a 1 of twin energy, or maybe a 2 of, depending on the deck and how much space you guys have access to in your list. So that's going to conclude all of the cards we're going to look at today. Like I said, we could actually go through the card pool even deeper and look at all of the Pokemon that attack for 3 and 4 energies that can abuse this, but I think we'd be here for, I think, probably far too long if we wanted to comb through the card pool to that extent. But I think we definitely had some pretty exciting ones to look at here. Of course, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, not all of these are going to be tier 1 archetypes, but a lot of these cards are cards that have been good in the past, and cards that would have otherwise probably been playable had they had the necessary energies to get up and running. So some of my personal favorite cards that look like they can abuse twin energy are going to be, of course, the Lost March deck. You know, finally being able to attack with Natu and Cottonee is something that's really, really strong. Being able to just nuke an ADP with a 40 HP Cottonee seems like a blast, and of course being able to hit things like Mewtwo Mew for weakness, also very good with Natu. Weezing, one of my personal favorite cards, though you technically could build around it in the current format with things like Welder and triple acceleration energy. I don't think those things are quite as consistent. They're a little bit clunkier than just having access to something like twin energy in the first place. And with one of my personal favorite cards from Rebel Clash being the new Flapple, I'm really excited to actually mess around with Spread once Rebel Clash is going to be legal for play and see if it might have a place in the metagame once again. You know, Steelix here falls more into the category of cards that might have been good had they had the necessary energy to get attacking. And since it's gained a lot of new tools over the past couple sets, I really am excited to mess around with this card and see if it has a shot at being a decent one prize deck in the new format. Being a stage 1 with 170 HP that can just nuke just about anything in the format with enough Pokemon to discard is something that is pretty enticing, I think. And of course, more so for the expanded format, I think one of the big ones everyone has been talking about is Seismitoad EX. I'm not a big Seismitoad fan. I've literally never played the card for a single event, even during its entire lifetime in Standard and Expanded. It's just never really been my playstyle. But nevertheless, I can't overlook the fact that Seismitoad might want to abuse something like Twin Energy. So, of course, guys, those are some of my picks for some of the better options to abuse Twin Energy with. But sound off below down in the comment section, what cards in the format are you looking forward to using with Twin Energy? And are there any cards that you think I might have missed? I know the card pool is really big, going all the way back to Black and White, so there very well may have been something I just glossed over, but definitely let us know down below in the comment section what your guys' thoughts on this card are and some of its best applications. But of course, guys, if you did enjoy this content, feel free to like and subscribe, and consider supporting this channel by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store, rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.